share this out later with any folks who will need it. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and put that in the chat as well. So you all can add things, look at it whenever you like. It's not too much today. Chat, there we are. All right. So just to honor everybody's time, especially Dr. Grant, who's going to be speaking in a minute, I'll get started. So we have some news, and I just wanted to say welcome and hello, and I hope all of you are planning great restful end of December time off and just kind of check out for a little while and get some rejuvenate, I hope, because we all need it. But we do have an update. Katie, do you want to share your good news / my bad news?
Yeah, so good news for me personally is I was offered a different position within county that at 6:15 when the board approves it tonight, it will be official, and I'll be moving from a grant project director to a science curriculum specialist, which means I'll be leaving our grant family, which I'm very sad about. And our district is still figuring out what we're going to do with the project director position. But because of that, JDP and Christy recommended that Cumberland County no longer host the regional meeting, just due to the fact of transitions. And I officially start the new position on January 2nd, whatever that Tuesday is. And then the new person, if they bring somebody else in, won't start until at the earliest mid-February, which would just then be a super fast turnaround. Oh, thank you guys. But because of that, Cumberland County has decided to, with a recommendation of JDP and Christie, step back from the regional meeting.
So,
which we're very sad about.
Yes, well, we're sad too. And we have done an awful lot of planning, but the planning will stay in place except for the wonderful things that you were doing down in Cumberland, of course. But the hope is that we're going to be switching to another district and closer one to us. I think it'll likely be in Virginia. Not Northern Virginia, for those of you who'd like to travel up here, but we'll do that another time. But we once I have the final information about that, I'll share it out about where, but we will keep the agenda the way we had it. We had some good speakers. We had planned for the world language people from Virginia Beach and from Newport News. We're going to do a breakout session, and they still will. We had SEL with Dr. Ransom and her team, and she is from the counseling department and counseling background, so really will be good information as well. And I believe we were going to do something on military connected families and how to get them more engaged as well. So those three topics will still be there. We'll be visiting different schools, clearly, in a different county, but and we will miss Katie. So we're hoping Katie will find a way back to us and be able to work with us at some level, because she really is a valued member of our team. So anyway, so again, my your happy news is my sad news, but it's all right. We'll let you move on to greener pastures. I just wanted to remind everybody, I did send out a calendar invite reminder to all of those who have to do this, but semester reporting is due at the end of January. So usually that means it opens up in the beginning of the month. So just keep that in mind. It should be on your calendars. Please try to save it and be aware of that. Those of you who have a 2022 grant like me, I'm not doing a reimbursement. So I just sent an email to JDP saying that I am not going to be doing a reimbursement this first quarter to keep me in compliance. So please make sure that you do that. It's important. If you are doing a reimbursement, great, nothing to worry about. But if for some reason, and any grant that is true for, if you're not doing a reimbursement, you can just send them an email and let them know that you're not going to be reimbursing this quarter, this semester. And that will keep you in compliance, and that they're starting, because of the audit, to be very critical of that and being very conscious of it. So just be aware. And we do expect that at the end of January we'll get the new application. So look for that. I'm assuming that it'll be similar to the one that we had this past year. I don't know that for certain. But so keep in mind for those of you like Cumberland County who maybe didn't apply last year, who might want to apply this year, since they have, a new science person who might be really interested in that information. hint, hint, you might want to get started on that. So just get some ideas out there and start thinking. I know that we'll start doing that too. And then when we do meet in March, with the hope that JDP and Christy can be there, they can give us, like they did last year, a lot of really good, solid information to help us with those applications as we finalize them. So that should be great. So we'll likely be meeting right before the grant application window would close. It would close, I believe it's April 7th. So that would be, we'll be meeting like maybe 2 weeks prior to that closing of that application. So that's all the information I have, unless anybody has anything that they want to add or any questions that you all have. Feel free to, since there's a tiny group today, feel free to just chime in. No, okay. And I know that we had some folks that said they couldn't make it for various reasons. In fact, Amber, the thoughts and prayers to her family. Her father is in the hospital. He broke his hip, so she's not joining us, but she did ask that we record. And so I am recording this session, and I will put it on YouTube and share it out with the folks that did not get to attend. So Dr. Grant, we will be able to be seen wide in a wide audience later when people are not having their celebration parties, probably. Sorry about that, but no we still love having you, and I'm going to turn it over to you now, and unless anybody else has anything else, I will stop sharing my screen and I will give you ability to share yours. There
all right, sounds wonderful.
There you go.
Let's see. All right, can you see that infusing diversity, equity, and inclusion into your DODIA work?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, wonderful, thank you. I can see some of you on the side of my screen. We're a small enough group that at any point, if you want to just unmute yourself, if you have a question, if you've got something you really wanted to ask somebody about, and this is an opportunity, please feel free to do that. I have some information that I have planned for you, but I always prefer to be able to be a resource to people to try to answer questions if you have specific questions. But as we go along, please feel free, or if you want to put something into the chat, I'll ask Dr. Bakutis to help me kind of monitor the chat, and Ms. Rowland, you too, if you would help me monitor the chat so that we be sure and we answer any questions that you might have. I'm so happy to be with you. I am learning about the day of work. Kelsey Carter, who most of you know, I'm sure, works within my division of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I had no military background. And so this has been a wonderful learning experience for me about how we work with the special needs of children who are military connected children and their families. And so I enjoy working with our students, enjoy working with our military installations that we have here in the Midlands area of South Carolina as well, and learning more about the wonderful work that all of you are doing. Just by way of introduction, I stick my nose into all aspects of Richland 2 business, even if others may not think it's my business, because diversity, equity, and inclusion encompasses everything that you do. And so from finance to saying to our chief financial officer, you know, when budget requests go in, you need to put a question in there about how does this serve the equity policy of the district, to transportation, meeting and providing professional development to bus drivers, to help them understand that when students get on their bus, they are the first representation of the district. And if things go well, then when they get off of the bus at school, that teacher has a good chance of making it a good day. If things do not go well on the bus, that teacher has a hard time of making sure that students get back on track, get back to a level place in order to be able to decide how their day is going to go, and everything in between. And so that's just a little quick bit about what it is that I do. Whenever I do any kind of presentation, I always like to let people know that you're in a safe and brave space with me. It's really hard for you to say something that I take offense to, because this is my job, is to provide a space where if you have a question, ask the question. I always ask whatever it is that it be respectfully done, but I generally do not take offense. Sometimes I'll know the answer and I'll answer. Sometimes I'll say, never thought about that or don't know, and I'll get your information and try to find out and get back to you. But this is a brave and a safe space for us to talk, because sometimes people, when we start talking about diversity and equity and inclusion, they get a little bit nervous. In the political climate that we live in right now in education, we know that some things that used to be just regular discussions have become very politicized, and sometimes people can get a little bit nervous about how to respond to those things. What do I say? Is someone going to take it the wrong way? And so these group norms I have found work well. I do respect silence, but would love to have your participation, because there are going to be opportunities for you to participate with us as we go along. And so the last one on there, when things are difficult, we will turn to wonder. And what I mean by that is, if I say something that just sounds totally out of whack to you before telling me how out of whack I am, wonder about why I said it, and wonder about why I said it the way I said it. And then wonder about what in my lived in experiences might have caused me to have the opinion that I've stated to you. And the same with anybody else as well. So any questions about our norms and kind of how we'll move forward? Anyone feel like we need to add anything to that to have a comfortable discussion? All right, well, we will get moving. And I thought, okay, we are just coming off of our district office holiday luncheon, where the theme was have fun and play. And we very purposefully put children's toys out on our tables to take people back to their childhood, to have some fun and play. If we were together in person, I'd do the same for you. But since we're online, I thought, well, let's just try something a little bit different. These are all things that I did not know, that I know a little bit of now, that hopefully you all know all together. So there are, I think, just 3 I put here. If you would, in the chat, put what is DOD? What is that the acronym for? Dr. Bakutis, if somebody's got it, you want to tell us?
I believe it was Katie who answered first. Yes.
Okay. All right, Katie, what is DOD the acronym for?
Department of Defense.
Yeah, that was the giveaway, just to get you started with it. All right, what about this one, the SLO? This one I knew nothing about until I started working with Dr. Bakutis and Ms. Carter. Any takers on SLO? Or if you want to just unmute and tell us.
Dr. Grant, we have several. The Dominique James School Liaison Officer.
Yeah. Because I did not have military background, I didn't know there was such a thing as a person whose job it is for the military installation to be responsible for being a liaison with all things related to education. So we have a wonderful relationship with our SLO here at Fort Jackson in Columbia, Mr. Fred Henley, who is a staple in our district, attends all of our board meetings and reports back up his chain of command as to what's happening in the school district. And he and Ms. Carter work very closely together to make sure that they're meeting the needs of our students, both the students that are on the installation at Fort Jackson, as well as the students that are here in our school district as well. And so then the last one, the CO.
Dominique James is on a roll. Dominique, do you want to unmute?
Yes, the CO is commanding officer.
Yeah. Okay, so those were easy, just to get you kind of warmed up. We'll see how our timing works, whether we get to some more a little later on in the presentation. So we're going to go. As I think about equity in particular, but really diversity, equity, and inclusion, Relationships is what comes to mind first for me, because good relationships underpin everything that you do in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And by very nature of what puts you on this call today, you do diversity work. And if you've never thought of it that way, then let me introduce you to the diversity of the work that you do. Your military connected students and families are different from your other families that are in your school districts. And I know that your programs and things support more than just your military connected students, but those students have some special needs and some different needs. So you are automatically doing diversity work, and the importance of good relationships just cannot be overstated. And so some of the characteristics that I think are important to healthy relationships are respect and trust and open communication, understanding and honesty. And, you know, these are not rocket science kinds of things. They're things that you all know. But sometimes it's good to just stop and think, what do I need to have in place to make sure that I am really developing some good, healthy relationships that will then allow me to use the funding that I am receiving to help these students who are so deserving of all of the help that we can provide to them. And then sometimes in your work, I know you have to develop new relationships. Sometimes you need partnerships to help you do the things that need to get done in your district. And so as I have worked over the years in this area, I've come up with kind of a short list of things that can help you develop new relationships. Not everyone is as comfortable as others with going out and developing new relationships. And maybe the first one surprises you a little bit. I say get to know yourself well first. Because then you're very centered in yourself. And as you're going out to advocate on behalf of your students, when people say things back to you, you learn not to take offense because you know who you are, you know what you stand for, you know how to move forward, you know how to respond to those kinds of things. So knowing yourself well as a first step is always, I think, most important. And then reach out to someone who you think is different from you. I used to say, reach out to someone who doesn't look like you, but I think it needs to be broader than that because we can not look the same, but be very much the same. Really, we have more in common than what we have that is different. When I first started in this position several years ago now, I reached out to the person that I thought in my building was the most unlike me and determined that I was going to be friends with this person. We developed a wonderful friendship. We were very much unalike, but then as we got to know each other, we found there was a lot that we had in common. And we built on those things that we had in common to overcome anything that was different. I accepted what he brought to our friendship that was different. He accepted what I brought to our friendship that was different. And we built something even better together. Be willing to hear and see a different perspective. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Practice empathy. We may not know exactly what somebody else is going through, but if we can try to put ourselves in their position and be supportive of others, showing that empathy will help to develop those good relationships. And then knowing how to disagree without being disagreeable. I will say that my skills in that area have been fine-tuned over the last 2 years as I tend to receive for the district a lot of questions and concerns about equity and diversity and inclusion and whether or not we are teaching children critical race theory and those kinds of things. And I have learned how to explain what it is that we do. I've learned how to disagree with people without being disagreeable, and I only ask the same thing of them. We may not at the end of the conversation agree on much of anything, but I believe that anytime you have the opportunity to speak with someone and to hear a different perspective, you grow. I grow. I may not agree with your perspective, but at least I understand it better. I know where you're coming from. And in the future, I may be able to do a better job because I can see and understand a different perspective. And so developing relationships are like the ones of redwood trees. I've never seen these giant redwood trees in person, but I've done a little reading about them, know a little bit about them and why they're so special. They often grow over 300 feet tall and can be more than 20 feet in diameter. So these are huge trees that we're talking about, but their roots are only 6 to 12 feet deep. They're shallow, but they're very wide. And what makes them special is that the roots intertwine with each other. And so you would think that for a tree to be so tall and so wide that a huge wind would be able to knock it over. Not true of the redwoods because of the interconnectedness of their root system. And that's what we want to have with the people that we're working with. That's the kind of relationships that we want to have with our communities that we work with, where we are so interconnected that when winds come, when troubles come, when disagreements come, when board memberships change, when new policies come down, when new laws are enacted, that our roots are so intertwined and so interconnected that we can still stand for the education of all students and that every student gets what they need because we've developed those kinds of good relationships. So when you think about relationships, think about the redwood trees and how they work together in their root system. So, okay, so I said relationships kind of underpin everything. We're going to get into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if you would just open up your mic, what is diversity? Tell me, what does it mean to you?
Differing opinions.
Yeah, yes, differing opinions. Anyone else?
Different cultural backgrounds
Yes, different cultural backgrounds.
and different economic backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. An issue that is very important in our school district. I imagine every school district is facing it, but we are seeing the numbers of our students that come from homes in poverty rise significantly. And so figuring out how to address the needs of those students becomes important. Yes, thank you for sharing in that. I define diversity very, very broadly, any way in which we or things are different. And so we've named some of those ways. Let's think about our military connected students. Are they different from other students? And if so, how do you think so?
Yeah, I think they are because they see a lot more things from all over the place. They've been more places in our country or other countries. So they have a little bit more experience in things like that. They've met more people, more diverse people.
They
Yes.
tend to relate to resiliency and have richer
Yes.
conversations around that.
Absolutely. They've learned how to adapt in ways that other children have not had to, because they've not had that experience of, I've been here 2.5, 3 years, and now I'm going someplace else, and then I'm going someplace else, and then I'm going someplace else. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other ways that you think about how they might be different or diverse from other students?
They have a level of stress that I don't think other students can appreciate, with parents potentially deploying and knowing that potentially they could be leaving their friends.
Right.
That they do make.
Right, right. And, you know, it's important not to overlook that. It's hard on adults. And so we can imagine that if we had a spouse or a significant other or a parent or a sibling that was moving away, we know what that feels like. And then try to imagine that situation for a child who may have a parent who's being deployed for an extended period of time. We know that there's some special needs that come with that. Absolutely. So this is a diverse group that we work with and work for. And we can be diverse in so many ways, but I like that someone said our thoughts and ideas. That's an area of diversity that sometimes gets overlooked. A lot of times people think race and ethnicity first, because that's what we think we see. What we really see is color, but we kind of think race and ethnicity first, but really diversity of thought is really important. And how a military child responds to the potential of leaving is very different from how a child who has been in the same house, in the same neighborhood, all the way up through 5th grade. And now they're thinking about moving, even just moving to another neighborhood in the same city. That child may respond very differently to the military child who is accustomed to having been in maybe 2 schools already by the time they get to 5th grade. And so just lots of different ways, even within that subgroup of military connected students and families, that we have diversity. Within races, there's just lots of different ways to see diversity, even within cultures. We sometimes describe the Hispanic culture or the Asian culture, and it's such a broad term because there are just so many people within that have unique characteristics and beliefs and faiths and traditions and holidays and things. And we kind of lump it into a big category, but there are just lots and lots of different ways that we can be diverse. And so diversity by itself is beautiful. We want to recognize those individual characteristics that make people special. And I liken it to the individual puzzle piece. Each puzzle piece has a beautiful color. It has its own shape. It has its own place as well. But inclusion is when we pull all of those puzzle pieces together into one picture. And so not only then in the puzzle that's put together do we have all of the beautiful different colors and shapes, but they all fit together to make one whole something that is likewise beautiful. And so diversity is wonderful by itself. I encourage always our teachers to recognize the diversity of students and to share that and to be joyous about it. But at the same time, make sure that every student knows how they fit into the whole picture of your classroom, how they fit into the whole picture of your school as well, so that they are included in everything. And this, I just found that I just like the way it looked, that everyone fits in here. And that's what we strive for with our inclusion, to make sure that everybody fits in. It's sometimes likened to a crayon box, where every crayon is important in and of itself. Each has its own color and has a spot for it to stand up straight and tall, but they're not going to all look the same depending on how they're used. You know, the red may be the shortest of the crayon because that's the favorite color. You know, the odd color that has the strange name may not get used at all. The white crayon may not get used at all because we have white paper, so there's not a lot of call for the white crayon, but they all have a place. They all have something to contribute, and inclusion is when we're pulling all of them in to be included. And then the second quote that I put in, inclusion is not bringing people into, I can't see it, the word, I think it's in spaces of what already exists, but it's making a new space, a better space for everyone. So when a new student comes in, when a military student comes into your school, it's not trying to fit them in, it's changing the space up so that they now have that place where they can stretch their arms, learn and play and grow and be their best selves as well. And then equity. My job when I started, the title was Diversity and Multicultural Inclusion. And after our board adopted an equity policy, my job title changed to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I really wanted it to be diversity, inclusion, and equity, because that's the way I always explain it. And then my supervisor, Dr. Franklin, said, you know, your acronym would be DIE, D-I-E. I said, oh no, drop that. And so, so when I explain what it is that I do it out of order from the acronym, because I did not want anybody to associate DIE with the work that we do. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is the way I explain it. But we do have an equity policy in our district, but that shows to the whole world, to our community, to our staff, to our students, everybody, how serious we are about equity. And we define it as every student receiving the opportunities and supports he or she needs to maximize his or her gifts and talents. And that's going to be different for every student. And we recognize that it's going to be different for every student. Recently, over the last 18 to 24 months or so, I've gotten some questions about, well, what does equity mean in education? Does that mean you're going to take something away from someone to give it to someone else? And I've replied, absolutely not. In fact, equity means just the opposite of that. I had somebody say, well, does that mean your high-fi or high achieving students, you're going to decrease funding for their programs in order to increase funding for someone else? And I said, absolutely not. Equity requires us to keep pushing our highest achievers even higher. It also requires us to make sure we're providing the supports for everyone else so that they too can become high achievers. And so one of the things that I think is important as, pardon me, as you do diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and in particular equity work, is to be able to explain to people what equity means in your district, what equity means for your grant in particular, so that they understand it. Sometimes we even have to avoid what have become buzzwords for some people and just say, as opposed to me describing it as equity, I might say, you know, if your daughter excels in math, then we want to use all of her math skills to help her be even better in math. And we want to use those same math skills to help her in ELA, in reading. And so we're going to find reading material for her that talks about mathematicians or that talks about math, because we know that's what she's interested in. We know that's what she excels in, and that's going to help her learn in the ELA and reading side of it. And people say, yeah, and they start nodding their heads like, yeah, that's what we want to do. And when I get them good and good understanding and feel like they're really following what I'm saying, then I might sometimes say, really, that's what equity is about. And they're kind of shocked. Oh, that's what you mean. And so sometimes we have to get away from what might seem to be in your community a buzzword or something and just explain what it is that we're doing. Really, we're just talking about good education practices, what we would do to make sure every student has what they need. And part of that is being sure we can explain that equity and equality are not the same thing. And so I love this little cartoon, mainly for the expressions of the animals. The man who's the keeper is saying it's fair, everyone gets an equal amount. Well, it's true that everyone gets an equal amount. We can see the bowls are all the same size and they all have the same amount in them. But is it really fair? Because the first little animal, let's call it a mouse, has too much. The little rabbit, and I call it a fox, probably are just right. They're looking pretty happy. The little dog is unsure. I'm not real sure this is going to work for me. Well, the kangaroo is just, no, this isn't working. And the donkey, the only thing I can say is a good thing he's not on the donkey's back. And so it's equal. They all are getting the same thing. But is it really fair? And clearly it's not equitable because they don't all need the same things. And so as we think about how you develop programs and initiatives and how you're using your monies to help your students, think about what the needs are of the students and how those needs might be different depending on who the student is or the grade level or the subject matter of the grant. So that if you're working with STEM education, for example, then you think, okay, how might needs be different? So that as opposed to saying, I'm going to give this classroom 500, this classroom 500, this classroom 500, then you might stop and think, okay, this classroom already has everything. Maybe they only need some support. This next classroom could use a little more equipment. Maybe they get 250, but they've got basically what they need. And maybe this classroom that doesn't have anything in it yet needs 1,000. Just as a way of starting to think about how do we best meet the needs of the students that are being served with the funding that is available to serve the purpose that it has been set out for. And so equality, I would argue, is not always fair. It might be in some circumstances, but in many times in working with students and developing minds, working with children, we find that equality is not there. All right, so let's do a little quick one, another one of our acronyms for POC, and just open your mic and tell me what is the POC.
Go ahead, Carol, shout it out. Yeah, there you go. She just said it.
Okay, point of contact. Yeah, that one's an easy one too. Now, what about this one? And this one I'll look to make sure I'm telling you right.
Cost of living allowance.
That's it. That's it. Excellent. Excellent. Ms. Carter and I had a just wonderful conversation. It really was earlier this morning. One of the projects that she worked with is she took some students to the VA hospital, and across the district, we collected supplies for homeless veterans. And the students had an opportunity to see the veterans come in and pick up the supplies. And she mentioned one gentleman in particular who had tears rolling down his face for the backpack that he received and the supplies, and the students being very, very concerned about, where's he going to go? Does he have a place that he's going to live? Because he just walked off. They didn't know where he was going. He didn't get into a vehicle. And that started a conversation with us about some of our military families don't have a lot in terms, not even our veterans, our enlisted service members don't always have a lot. And for those of us who are not connected to this community, I think we're kind of blind to that. And so knowing about a cost of living allowance is important, because families can have a hard time, and we have to think about that. And I won't go on to my soapbox of what I think our nation needs to do about it, but that's what prompted the cost of living allowance to be included in that one. All right, this one you know too.
Permanent change of station.
Yes, yes, yes. When we tend to say goodbye to our friends and families that we've had for a while, and they're heading off to another spot. Or we're saying hello to new ones coming in, because they have also had that permanent change of station. All right. So I want to spend the next couple of minutes just talking about some barriers that you might come across to diversity, equity, and inclusion, some things to be on the lookout for. And the first is if we don't see a different perspective. So Tim, what's the first thing you see when you look at this?
We both see two faces, two women looking at each other.
Okay. Anyone see anything different?
A vibe?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, and I can't explain the science behind it, but depending on what you see when you first look, that tends to be what you see every time when you first look at it. But it could be either. Just depending on what our perspective is, it depends on the time of day, the lighting, whatever it is that we look at it. We're all looking at the same graphic. I didn't change the graphic. We're all looking at it, but we can see different things. Here's another one.
Rabbit.
I see a bunny, Kara sees a duck.
That's it, sitting right beside each other, looking at the same thing, you can see different things, just depending on how we interpret, whether it's the bunny ears or the duck's bill that's there. We're looking at the same thing, but we're seeing two different things because it's a different perspective to see. And how about this one? What's the first thing you see when you look at it?
See like half of the front of his face, but then I also see his nose and lips as if he's looking to the right.
Right, right. Sometimes you look at it and it's like looking front on to the face, and sometimes like a profile from the side of the face. Again, we're all looking at the same thing. And so it's a matter of perspective of what it is that we're seeing. And this one I use, or something similar to this, I use a lot with my staff of teachers. And I say, sometimes the teacher is on one side and the parent is on the other side. Sometimes the teacher is on one side and the administrator is on the other side. If they're both looking down, one might see an M, one might see a W. Neither is wrong, neither is right. They just are looking at the same thing, but looking at it from a different perspective. And just depending on the perspective that you're looking from will depend on how you interpret the information is there. And so you working closely with your military connected students have a perspective of, but these kids have these special things that need to be taken into account. And this really is an M, and it's an M because of, and you list all of the other things. And the person you're trying to convince says, that may all be true, but I'm telling you that it's a W, it's not an M. And so then you've got to figure out, so what do you do in a situation like this? I put this to some freshman high school students about 2 weeks ago and asked them, okay, try to convince the group standing on the other side that what you're saying is true. What would you do? How would you try to go about that? You can use any kind of scenario you want to use.
Could you pose the question one more time?
Yeah, if you were trying to convince, let's say if you were on one side of it and you were trying to convince the person on the other side that you were right. So let's say if you wanted to propose a certain project to be used under a grant funding, and you're trying to convince someone that that's what needs to be done, and they're saying, no, that really is not going to be helpful. What kinds of things might you do to try to help them to see it from your point of view?
I would share some anecdotes maybe about ways it has been done that's similar to what I'm trying to propose.
Yeah. Data, any data that you might have, would be helpful with that. The students had a pretty inventive thing that they did. I actually had this on a cardboard and I put it down on the floor and separated them into groups. And one of the groups took the cardboard and turned it. And they turned it first completely around so they could see what it looked like from the other side. And then they only turned it halfway and said, it really is neither M nor W, it's just squiggly lines. Let's see what we can make out of it. So I think there are a lot of different things that you can do once you realize that someone is looking at it from a different perspective. If you're a teacher and a parent, for example, the parent has some knowledge of the student that you don't have because they're at home with them. The teacher has some knowledge that the parent does not have because the teacher's in school with them all day. It may take both people stepping around to the side and say, let's just stop and compare notes. Let's see, what is it that you see at home? Let me tell you what I see at school. And then let's figure out how do we work together for the benefit of this student, because it doesn't make any sense for us to argue one over the other. We just need to be able to understand each other and figure out what's going to work best for the people that we're working with. So failure to see a different perspective can be a barrier to equity. And we have those different perspectives because we come from different places. We grew up in different places. We experience different things, and we see things through our own point of view. And so at the very least, be willing to try to see another person's perspective. Again, like I said, you don't always have to agree with them, but at least try to understand it and try to see it so that as you talk with them, it doesn't turn into a battle as such. Implicit bias is another thing that can be a barrier to equity. And those, all of us are biased. We all have biases. They're natural, they're normal. Doesn't mean that we're a bad person. And please, no one walk away from this and say that I said anybody was racist, because it's not the same thing. Our biases are just shortcuts that our brains take to help us process information. I would hope that wherever you are, if the fire alarm goes off right now, you're going to jump up and evacuate the building because your implicit bias is going to kick in and say, that's an alarm, I need to get out. Right now, none of you are responsible for students, so you're not worried about trying to take other people with you. I would hope that, Betsy, you'll take whoever's sitting there beside you and say, come on, we got to go. But, that's how implicit biases work. Our brains take shortcuts to tell us things. And a lot of times it has no negative impact at all, but it can have negative impact because sometimes it will allow us to play into stereotypes that are not real. And that can then impact how we treat other people. A new person is coming in, let's say in the place where the person is leaving to take another position, the new grant person comes in, and for whatever reason, we don't think they have the background and experience that they need in order to really do justice to the grant work. And we don't believe that. We don't really know why we don't believe it, but we just don't believe it. And if one person shares that with another person and that person says, well, that person knows them better than I do, so that must be right. They must know what I'm talking about. And then things kind of build up. And then you're thinking, this person just isn't going to do a good job. And they've not even started the job yet. and we don't know what kind of work they can do. That's how biases build up. And then we're not conscious about it. And implicit biases are those unconscious biases. It's not things that we think about every day, so that we don't walk around saying, oh, we're going to treat this military connected student different because, you know, they're probably not going to be here more than 2 years. So we're not going to pay them any attention. We're just going to do for somebody else. Nobody has those kinds of explicit biases that they work on. If so, I hope you can see it and you know what to do with that kind of behavior. But these are things that operate unconsciously that we have to be very, very careful about. And they can be about size. We can have implicit biases about a person's size. We think, oh, this person looks really big. That probably means they don't have any energy. They're not going to be really excited about the work. And we start down a path. And again, we realize we don't know any of that to be true. This is just what a shortcut our brain is taking. And we're not even conscious that it's doing that. So when it's time to go out to lunch and we normally take the steps, we say, oh, do you want to go to the steps or should we take the elevator? Implying that the person would not have the ability to go down or up the steps. All just based on implicit biases that we have. I'm just trying to give you some examples of kind of how they can kick in without you really being aware of them. And we do have to be careful about them because that intersection in there between that false assumption and our actions based on that false assumption is a scary place, because now we're out with no underpinning. We're out without the relationship building that we talked about from the beginning. And we're just stuck in what our brains are taking a shortcut telling us is true, which may have no truth in it at all. And when we start taking action on that, then we really get into a scary place. Implicit biases can allow us to make assumptions about people, to conclude that something is acceptable or true without that actual proof. This person didn't qualify to do the work, and we have no proof of that. We just accept that somebody told us that, or we just don't think that. We don't like the school they graduated from. It's our rival in-state institution, so we think they just can't be as good as what somebody else would be because they graduated from that school. Or it can allow proof to become unnecessary because our assumptions are grounded in past learnings experiences. The last time I worked for somebody with that company, they didn't follow through. They didn't do what they were going to do. So this company really doesn't care about our students and our military connected programs and our grant. Well, it may be that that individual person didn't do a good job, not that the company is not caring about it. So we have to be careful about those biases. And so how do you find out if you've got implicit biases that are working? First is to acknowledge that you do have biases. All of us do. I continue to discover mine. Probably more often, my children continue to tell me, Mom, you know, you have a bias about this. And I generally say, no, I don't. And they say, yes, you do. And I say, when? And they say, every time this happens, you respond this way. And I have to stop and think and say, yep, you know, you're right. I'm wrong. I wasn't even aware of it. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. So at least now I can be aware of it. You have to kind of work to overcome those things. But the first step is self-awareness. Just knowing what your biases are will take you to a long way towards getting over using them, especially to another person's disadvantage. So self-reflection is that first step. If that doesn't work, ask a friend, because other people can see our implicit biases even when they're acting unconsciously, when we're acting unconsciously on them. Students in particular will see implicit biases of adults that they're around often. If you're really, really brave, you can ask students. If you're not really, really brave or you're not ready to hear it, don't ask students, because they will tell you. They see them and they will tell you. We all have them. They're natural and they're normal. And so if you ask them, they'll tell you. You might not be ready to hear that, but if you are, ask. I always say that if you're going to ask a friend for help on this, don't ask your significant other person in your life unless you can take criticism from your significant other person, because they see them too. And they may not be saying anything about them because they figure it's not consequential. So, you know, why even bring that up? Or I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. But if you ask, you open the door for it, and you might hear all kinds of things. And so if you want to preserve that relationship and not delve there with a significant other, then just ask a friend, somebody that you trust and who knows you. But other people can see our implicit biases. And for kids, this becomes so important because not only do they see them, but they think we know them and we're doing it on purpose. And so I tend to stand to one side of a room when I'm presenting in person, and I've had to work really hard to make myself move within a room so that I don't show favoritism just to one side. Teachers can end up doing the same kinds of thing. You find kind of that favorite place, you're close enough to that student you might need to put your hand on, but you can still see everybody else in the class, and you find and you're still within that little 4-foot radius place in the classroom. The kids on the other side of the room think you do that because you don't want to be over there with them. And so it's important to kind of evaluate the things that you do to make sure it's not coming across to others as a negative experience. When those things fall apart or you just don't want to do any of those things, you can Google implicit bias tests. There are lots of them out there that you can take. The Harvard test is the one that I like to use. But if your feelings are going to get hurt to know you're biased, don't take the test. It will show biases because biases are natural and normal. We all have them. Pardon me. They're just shortcuts that our brains take, but it's out there for you just in case. I think probably this is a good, well, let me just say one word on privilege, because this can get to be very sticky. Some people get upset when you talk about privilege. Well, how can you say one person is privileged over another? Is there anyone on the call who's left-handed? Unmute if you're left-handed.
I am.
Okay. Do right-handed people have privileges over left-handed people?
Do right-handed have privilege over left-handed, you said?
Yes. Do right-handed
Yes.
people have privileges?
Yes,
Okay.
they do.
What kinds of things, I'll give you some here. Right-handed people, we tend to shake with our right hands. We pledge allegiance with our right hands. We salute with our right hand. We take government oaths with our right hands. It used to be that school desks were set up for right-handed people. Composition books, notebooks, spiral notebooks, baseball mitts. When you get in your car to crank your car, it's on the right-hand side. Either you're putting your key in or you're pushing a button. It's on the right-hand side. Most of the cup holders are to the right-hand side for the driver. So there are lots of things that are made for right-handed people that left-handed people have to adapt to. And really that's all privilege is. It's a benefit that you have most of the time in the framework of my work. It's not anything that you have done to earn it. It's just a benefit that you have that others do not. And understanding that you have that benefit can then help you so that if you have students who are left-handed, you can make sure that you're positioning them so that they can be as comfortable as possible in the classroom. So I just wanted to say a word about privilege, that if you ever have to talk with somebody about privilege and they're saying, no, you can't say one person is privileged over another. Sometimes if you use an example like right-handed and left-handed, people will understand it a little better. Doesn't mean one is smarter than the other. Doesn't mean one has more capability than the other. It just means that when we design things for us to work with, we design them mainly for right-handed people. I am going to stop and open the floor if there's anyone with any questions or comments or anything that you might have before we end our time together.
Well, thank you very much. I think that it's nice to hear that we all have implicit biases as a reminder and that we can reflect on them, because it's hard to hear that. I feel like that, you know, we try to be, especially as educators, and, you know, that we try not to do that as much as we can, but to be aware that they really are there, regardless of how hard we try. Right. We need to be aware of what they are. And that's the hard part. That's the work.
Yeah.
And I think your discussions over the barriers that we face in having equity. You presented them in a way that was non-threatening. And then that way you can get that idea in your head and then apply it to other things in the world. And then it makes it, I guess, when you're sharing or trying to help someone to evolve, that makes it a more comfortable stance. It's very good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that is critically important right now in the climate in which we work, to be able to do that. Because if you come on too strong, a person won't hear what you have to say, and you have a hard time hearing what they have to say. Well, I appreciate the opportunity always. I count you as friends, and thank you for the work that you do for all of our military connected families and students and all of the other students that you work with. Hope that everyone will have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this,
Yeah,
Dr. Grant.
thing.
We actually had a very good attendance. A lot of people were not on screen, but we did have about 14, I think, or more. So it actually was a lovely attendance, and thank you all for taking the time. For those of you who didn't make it to us earlier, I just wanted to update you. We're not going to be going to Fayetteville this March, but we will have another location. And as soon as I know that information, I will share it out with you. And then the other updates of just, be aware that January 31st, you'll have your report due, and that, if you're not going to be submitting any reimbursements for this semester, that you send an email to Dodia letting them know. And so you stay in compliance. I know that 19 total. Thank you very much. That's pretty good. I kept adding, I kept looking, and I was like, oh, good. But it was, I think many people had to go, were a little bit remote. So that was a little bit different. Canada apparently can't get into FCPS. Who knew? I guess international makes sense. But anyway, what Dr. Grant said, please, all of you have a restful, wonderful holiday. If you have any questions for me, feel free to open up your mics, chime in right now. I'm happy to answer what I can or find out answers if I can. And we look forward to seeing you all at the new year.
That was a good one.
It was.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Really wonderful.
Oh, I said that out loud.
Well, that's good. See, that's honest feedback right there.
I'm going to sign off so you can continue your honesty.
There you go. The best. Bye.
Nancy, this is Denise. Can you stay on for 1 second,
I
please?
sure can, Denise. Absolutely.
Because I was at the high school and came on late.
Oh, no problem. I saw you pop up. Yeah, no problem at all. Good to see you.
Yes, ma'am.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. You as well.
You too, Arlene.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody
Be
rest
safe.
up. Bye,
Be
Kelsey.
safe.
Take care. Bye,
Yes,
Katie.
you guys too. Be safe, Katie in Colorado. I like your acronym for
I
CO.
know.
Thank you.
See,
Um,
That was so
are you
cool.
going skiing? Are you-
Before, yeah, I'm gonna go skiing with some friends over New Year's.
Oh, fun.
Nice.
But Kelsey, I'm not ignoring your emails, but
Oh,
if,
I got you.
yeah, so that, because we're not meeting here, I didn't want to say anything until I knew that it was
Yeah.
gonna be approved, so.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes.
It's the best.
It's all
Thank you.
good.
You guys have a good week.
Yeah, you too. Congratulations
Bye.
again.
Hi, thank you. Thank you.
Take
That's
care.
Appreciate it.
great.
Bye. All right.
Hey, Nancy,
Yeah, how you doing?
I was just trying to catch up with,
Yeah.
did I hear we're not going to North Carolina?
We
Is
are
that-
not. We are likely going to York, Virginia, but that
Where's
is
York?
it's York, Virginia. It's
Oh,
it's
okay.
near Williamsburg. It's not too
Okay.
far from Norfolk, Virginia Beach. It's in that general area.
Okay,
That's not 100% yet. I need to get them. They're looking to get approval, but it's looking like it'll probably likely be there. And it'll be just a couple weeks later. We're looking at the week of the 20th of March. So just keep that. As soon as I have a complete confirmation, I will send out a save the date for everybody. It's like, but Katie got promoted if you didn't catch that part. So
Oh, I did. What happened now?
Katie got promoted and she will no longer be the project director. And because of that, they don't expect to put a new project director in place until February, and the timing would just be too close for that person to be able to do it. So JDP thought it would be just better if we switch gears, and she was excited to ask York. So we're hopeful that they will be able to do it. I was there in October visiting the schools, And they have a lot of great STEM programming going on there, so it should be good. And they just got a world language grant. So they sort of have a little bit of both, which may be the reason that she wanted to go to them.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and they also, there's Virginia Beach is not too far away, which also has grants, and Newport News is right next door to them. So there's kind of a lot of things going on in that area. So it would be, I think it'll be good. It'll be it's a nice area. So hopefully by the end of March, it'll be a little warmer. Not a lot, but
Maybe
a little.
update my calendar and just get my life together for the spring. So
Yeah. So figure that last week. So the 20th of March, I'm thinking 20, 21, 22, but I don't know that for certain either. So that's my hope.
all right, so that might be our spring break again. So that'll work out. It worked last time. It'll be. I just needed to know so I can make sure I don't make any spring break plans.
Oh my goodness, that stinks for you though. I hate that
Oh,
keeps
no,
happening. Okay, all right. You're administration, right? So you can take other time off. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate you ladies. Thank you so much.
Yes, anything else? Is that all you got?
Sorry?
Is that all you have? That's the only question?
Yes, that's all. I
easy.
thought that I don't want to hold the whole group because I was late.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem. I'm glad you were able to pop in. We're going to keep the idea is to keep the agenda exactly the same, except for visiting York schools instead of Cumberland. So that's all. So it should be good. Yeah, I'll get you that information. Have a great holiday.
All right. Same to all of you.
All right.
Okay,
Take
bye,
care.
everyone. Bye.
Take care. Okay, we're seeming like we're down now. Somebody still on the line. I don't know. I don't see anybody else, but it says 3 participants, but it's not counting
Yeah,
Kara.
we have a Janet. Janet, are you still there? Hi.
Oh, I can't see her.
I think she had 2 things open. I don't.
Oh, maybe she forgot.
So I don't think she's still there. You may be able to.
No,
You may
I
be
don't
able to-
see her at all. It says participants 3 at the bottom, and when I look, it doesn't show me a person. So it's okay. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
We're just going to talk about hackathon stuff. So I don't think
Yeah.
if she really wants to hear, she's more than welcome to
Yay,
join us.
hackathon.
We welcome friends. Yes.
Our new tabletops look great.
Great.
Oh,
Yesterday.
yay. Okay. And then remind me when I see you Thursday, we'll do the receiving on that.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. That's not what I wanted to share, but
Yeah, and then did you email the specifics? I think you did to the STEAM team, like Roberta, Chris, and the other people.
I did do that to the STEAM team. Yes, and I will do it. My plan is to send it out one more time. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
I don't remember a response from them, but was there one?
No, I did send an email to all of them that included the schedule and
Okay,
where we had
perfect.
them, where we had them placed.
Do we have the email of the day? You know how you did in Google? Do they have that?
I have, hold on, I'm pulling it up now. I can't, of course, it's not coming up easily. Here we go.
No, take your time.
There it is. I got it now. I had it on the screen already. All right. This one. Okay. So I shared this first day with them because that's the day they'll be here. So I cut this block and I shared that with them and told them where I needed them. So I will share this again with everybody. And I see that I put Keisha in, Valentine in, and I put Tori Diggs in because that's what the days they said they were available. So that's amazing because that really
is amazing.
And then I put Jessica in, and I did email Jim just to confirm that she's coming. So that could be maybe not, but I have her on there.
That's lovely.
And that fills us. That does us. That's great.
Lovely. I love that.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, so we'll appreciate all of that.
I need to print the answer keys just in case.
I know. I emailed Tom. Oh, you know what? He was saying he was having trouble getting with emails because he was behind. I'm going to be on the phone with him tonight.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him tonight and I'll ask him about that for sure.
I think that will ease some fears, talking to Alex Neidert and a couple other teachers. If they had an answer key, they just feel better about it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.